the challenge from James and thinking about trials and what that looks like and rejoicing even in the pain and the difficulty. And so it was an amazing talk last night, and I know a lot of you heard that and were inspired and pushed to think about your relationship with Jesus. And so we're excited this morning that he's back, and we're also thankful that his wife is here and his newborn baby girl. So why don't you give his wife a big round of applause? We're so thankful they're here. That's like the cutest little girl back there. It's so cute, except for, of course, my two daughters. Yeah, sorry, Kendall City. But anyway, so Sean is here to share with us again. So why don't you come on up, Sean, and bring the word for us. Give him one more round of applause. How's that?
Hello?
There I am. Oh, thought I'd put my little purse down on the floor. All right. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. It's been interesting. So Austin, the guy that led worship, is actually the campus pastor at the church my wife and I attended in most of 2017. And so I've heard him preach a bunch of times, and he's excellent at it, but I haven't heard him lead worship. So this was really cool to get to be a part of that. But so if you guys weren't here last night, my name is Sean Chandler. As he said, that's my wife right there in the back of the room with my 3.5-week-old daughter. What weeks? Yes, whatever she said is probably correct. And as I told them last night, if I'm telling a story and you're wondering, is this true? Just turn around and look at her. She will nod. She will confirm the reality of my stories. Also, back home, we have 2 more kids, but they are quite a handful. So we thought we probably shouldn't try and speak and do all this fun stuff with them running around the building. So they are with my mother right now. But so as he mentioned, last night we kicked things off talking about trials, the hard things that happen in life. And today we're going to continue looking at this idea of trials, and we're going to look at a very specific element when trials happen, and that is that when a trial happens, there will be this voice inside of your head that will start to suggest things to you that in any other context you would say, I probably shouldn't do that. You'll have this voice in your head that'll say, that's a good idea right there. And if you were given a test and it was like, good idea, bad idea, this option right here, in that moment of the trial, suddenly it'll think good, justified. I mean, you've earned this, and it will start telling you to do things that in other contexts you would never imagine doing. So imagine, even just this morning, that's my little baby. I just wanted to put a picture of it in here. I didn't have a good explanation for why this is in here. But so this morning, some of you guys were probably at a house. You probably stayed up a little bit too late. And this morning, someone tried to wake you up, and then a voice in your head said, just go ahead and stay. 5 more minutes. Maybe 10. And it starts telling you that you know you're supposed to get up. You know perhaps someone's probably going to pour water on you, start beating you up or something like that if you don't get up. But that voice in your head says, go ahead and just stay here. Or another example, something that kind of went a little bit crazy earlier this year. Normally, if you're at your house and you see Tide Pods, you would think those are probably for, laundry. Now, perhaps you're at a friend's house and a trial comes up. You want your friends to like you, and they suggest something that normally at home, if you're at home, you've never thought, Tide Pods, those look delicious. I would love to try one of those. But suddenly you're with your friends and you want to fit in, you want to be the funny guy, so they say, hey, let's do the Tide Pod challenge. What's that? You grab a Tide Pod and you eat it. And suddenly you find yourself downing a Tide Pod. I recommend you really don't do that. It's a really bad idea, but this voice in your head says, you'll fit in, they'll like you. We have these thoughts that run through our head. They're crazy, like the insanity that was a thing earlier this year, that people were eating Tide Pods. But in that moment of that trial, that voice in that says, do it, it'll be funny. It's really not very funny. Or a little story from my past. So growing up, my family loved Christmas. Like most people, and my mom loved to do these big Christmases with tons of presents. And when I was young, for whatever reason, I got left home a lot. And so I'm at home, And I see all these presents, and I'm like 7, 8 years old or whatever it was. Mom's not around, and I think, I want to know what I got for Christmas. And it's just, you should probably look at the presents. Like, oh. So I walk in, start shaking the presents and everything like that, and go, but I really want to know what's in there. And that voice says, do it. Your mom's not around. That's true. And I start looking around the house and realize, you got some duct tape. You can rewrap these. So as this little kid, I start kind of a little bit peeking, tearing open, and I open up all of the presents because that voice said, it's a good idea. You got to know. How could you possibly wait 2 more days? So I start opening up all of my presents, and then the voice goes, your mom's going to notice these are all open. Use that duct tape and wrap them all back up. So start wrapping the presents back up, and I put them under the tree. Mom comes home, and she noticed something was different. So that voice had lied to me. I wasn't actually able to wrap them the same way that my beautiful mother is able to wrap a present beautifully. So after this year, because of this incident where I opened all the presents trying to figure out what I was trying to do, my mom, moving forward, all Christmases in the future, didn't put names on presents anymore. She put numbers on the presents. And so every Christmas morning, we'd have this list where she'd look at the list and what presents went to which people. It was very complicated, but it worked until the year she lost the list. So Christmas morning, here you go. And Malibu Barbie, Mom, how did you know this is what I wanted? But in those moments, oh yeah, and I also wrapped the cat. There we go. But so in those moments of trials, when things get hard, suddenly options that you would never consider, you start entertaining because of that little voice inside of your head. And it starts telling you, go for it, do it. So as we dive into this idea of temptations that happen in those moments of hard time, this key verse, he says in the middle of all of it, he says, don't be deceived. Because that voice inside of your head, it's a deception, and it's going to start telling you to do things you would never do in any other context. So back a few verses before this, we'll kind of dive into where we're going to be at, and he says this, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. So he kicks things off. That first deception that we believe is that God's doing this to me. He says, no, don't ever believe that when you're tempted, it's God tempting you. And he's going to tell us in just a moment who is tempting us. But what he's saying is, when you feel that temptation, it's not God. God will put you in trials. He will test you. So God will put you at a home with a bunch of presents. And you'll go, wow, I'm really tempted by it. God will allow presents to be in your home. He will even allow duct tape to be in the home, so you go, oh, I could rewrap all of these. And you'll start having those thoughts. He will test you in that sense. God will allow you to be in a place with Tide Pods, with friends. But God is not going to be the one in your head going, go ahead, do it. You'll fit in. It's hilarious. That's not the voice of God telling you to do that stuff. So the first deception is the idea that God is the one tempting me. No, it's not God. God will allow hard things to happen, but God is not the one tempting you. He's going to continue on. And he says this, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own desire and enticed. So this is really key. When we start talking about temptations and in those moments of the trials, when it's hard, and that voice is going to start saying you should do something, that temptation actually comes from something within you. There's something that you desire. There's something that you want that tempts you to head in a direction that you know you shouldn't go. So you stop and think about it. There's not a lot of people that are tempted to overeat celery. Like you're not sitting there going like, oh man, I just can't stop eating celery. There's not a lot of people in that situation where it's just buckets and buckets of celery. Most people are like, yeah, I guess I need to eat celery, but it's not my first choice as to what I'd like to eat. Shh. So there's things that you want that you actually desire, and that's what's enticing you. And the language he uses is sort of kind of this fishing language of sorts. So you think through it. I'm not a fisherman, so I'm probably going to describe this wrong, but you have a lure. There's some bait that you put out there, and you put it in the water, and some fish sees, oh, look, it's like a little froggy. He's swimming. his leg is wobbling awfully funny. He's probably injured, and he looks so delicious. And what the fishy doesn't see is the hook. All it sees is the deception, this fake froggy thing. Maybe you guys don't look like people that eat frogs, so maybe whatever this is, maybe you're a whatever this thing is, and so it's floating in the water, floating along, and the fish sees it and goes, ooh, what's that little shiny thing on there? Wow, I love shiny things. And then it gets a hook in the mouth. It's not biting that to get a hook in the mouth and then have you pull it out of the water and chop its head off. No, it thinks it's getting a delicious snack. See, in each deception, in each time we're tempted, there's some deception. There's a thing that we see that looks amazing. And you just see the deception. You just see all the positive things that will happen if you go for this thing or this thing. Whatever yours is, whatever you're tempted by, there's something you see that you think you will get out of it, and you ignore the fact that there's a hook on the inside. Every temptation is like that. So I think through a friend of mine that went off to college, and the problem he had when he went to college is that he watched too much TV. Okay, that's not him. That's a dog. But it's a funny image. So one of my friends, he did excellent in high school. Just like great student, got into Texas A&M, went off to college, had an apartment with a couple other guys. We all kind of grew up going to church together. And this guy got off to college, and college is stressful, and you're away from your parents, and so there's all kinds of new stresses that happen. And his parents had kind of run a little bit of a tight ship, that sort of thing. And so he was kind of restricted on how much TV he could watch. And so he gets to college, mommy's gone, daddy's gone. And so he just sits down and watches TV as soon as he gets home from class. Just gets home, he's like, that was a stressful day. Turns on the TV. And this is before Netflix, where like it made sense, because like right now it's like a whole season of TVs right there, and you're like, I'll just sit here and watch all of this. No, this was back in the, he's just like switching through random channels, just watching any junk. Because he'd always wanted to be able to just sit there and watch TV as much as he wanted. Mommy, daddy's gone. And he starts to fail out of college because he's watching TV. And I've heard stories of people that it was video games or partying, and they go off to college. There's all kinds of stresses. There's all kinds of new access to the things that their parents never would let them do. And so suddenly they're in a position where that bait, always wanted to watch TV for 15 hours straight. Oh, wow. 15 hours later, wait, I'm supposed to go to class? What? Or whatever it is. Constantly happens to people when they go off to college. But you have to think, what is your thing? What is the thing that tempts you? You know, a lot of girls, high school, college, they see their friends and they've got a boyfriend, or their friend has a boyfriend. She wakes up, she's lonely, goes, wow, that's right, I have my friends. Like, I'm the only one that's single. So he walks outside and there's two doves flying together. Like even the birds have a boyfriend and girlfriend. And they looks over and there's two people holding hands walking down the street. And so then this lie in the head says, you just need a boyfriend right now. She starts to compromise and starts dating some loser. Someone that she would never date this person. All of her friends are like, what is she doing? I mean, I was in youth ministry for 15 years now. I've been working with teenagers, and I've seen it over and over and over again where there's a guy or a girl where I'm going, why? Why are they dating that person? It's because it's the bait. They see other people, and there's something they want, and so they compromise in the midst of that situation. Sometimes it's simpler. A lot of guys are kind of visual-based, so they see girls, and then they have all sorts of thoughts in their heads that they shouldn't have. Real simple. See, what happens is there's these lies that we believe when we're in trials. We start thinking through them like, I've earned it. I've earned it. Like, I've earned it. I've done some great stuff, so I can compromise a little bit on my standards. It's only once. And you guys are young. Like, you guys are right now at the point in time where you're probably going to start dabbling in things that are going to create patterns in your life. And you're thinking, you're at a friend's house, pulls up some website that you know you shouldn't be at, start talking about things you know you shouldn't talk about, and you think, oh, I'll only do this once. But it never works like that. that deception, that voice in your head goes, yeah, it's okay, it's only once. But it never is only once. If you're in a relationship and you think, oh, he loves me, therefore I'll cross lines. Where I had a really bad day, therefore it's okay for me to do fill in the blank. Said, you guys are young, so you might not even have fully thought through the deceptions, those voices in your head that try to justify actions that you take. But each one of them, they're just one of these. And you see the deception, the justification, why it's okay to do something that in any other context, you would never, ever move in that direction. Continues on, and he says this. Then after desire has conceived, so he starts using kind of like this birthing language, which my wife just had a baby, so this is very vivid imagery for me. But then after desire has conceived, and it gives birth. So when there's that desire and you act on it, what does it give birth to? Sin. So it's not, the being tempted isn't the sin, but when there's a temptation, there's that desire, and you act on it, that's when it becomes sin. And sin, when it fully grows up, if you let that sin sink into your life and time passes and you don't deal with that thing where you've given in, sin leads to death. Just kind of simplified. If you're a math person, there's the Bible in math form. So you think through it. What he's trying to say is you have to stop and play out where this will go. Whether that's going to that website, that relationship with someone you know you shouldn't date, whatever that temptation is with, play it out. Or this friend of mine in college that watched too much TV. Let's play this out. All right, if you get home from college or class and you watch 12 hours of TV, don't really sleep, don't do your homework, and then go to class again, what will happen at the end of this path? It's not good. And you can, if you look at other people when they start heading down these paths, it's really easy to see where it's going, and it's not good. But when it comes to ourselves, we believe the deception inside of the moment. Reminds me of a little story about my dogs. Kids and dogs illustrate things really nicely. So back about 8 years ago when they were that young, they're much, or one of them's older, one of them we had to put down this past summer. That got real depressing real fast. So back when they were young, still fit, one day our fence was falling apart, so we got a new fence, and then a dog on the other side of the fence barked, and one of our dogs ran towards the fence and jumped up at it, and suddenly he realized it wasn't going to wobble, and he just jumped over the fence. And then the other dog went, well, I can jump over the fence? And the dog runs up and jumps over the fence as well. And this started a 2-year nightmare of our dogs constantly jumping over the fence. And these are big, fast dogs. And so if they get over the fence, they then run through the neighbor's backyard and jump over the second fence, and they are down the street by the time we can get into our car. And so we brought in dog trainers, and we're like, what can we do about this? They're like, nothing. What do you mean? No, I thought you were the experts. Yeah, this is the one thing we can't fix. What? And so then we went and got an invisible fence, one of these deals where they have the shock collar. And so then we trained them and everything. And one day, this one on the left, she got that desire, she's believed that she had to go, was tempted. And I'm in the backyard, and I watch her run and jump. She grabs the fence. I grab her by the tail. I am pulling her with all my might, and she's a pit bull mix. She's very strong. And I see the electrodes shocking her neck. And it's like shaking. I was like, I'm like torturing my dog right now, and I'm trying to save her because she's going to run away. I had to pull her down, and it took years and moving and retraining them so many times to break that temptation that they had because they couldn't see down the path. They couldn't see where it went. Like for me, I see my dog running out in the street, and immediately what image comes to your minds? Cars, splat, hamburger meat. I guess it's dog meat. They're not hamburgers. Dog hamburgers. That'd be delicious. But that's where my mind immediately goes. They're dogs. All they know is freedom. All they see is freedom, 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 freedom. And they're chasing. What else is out there? And all they're doing is chasing after whatever it is. So kind of our big idea today is there's always more on the line than we think. We just see the bait, but there's always that hook in every temptation. You have to play out where the path leads. To kind of get real heavy real quick. So last night I mentioned to you guys that my dad died when I was 20 years old. And basically what happened was when he was in high school, he had some friends that pulled out some beers. Hey, let's drink. So he started drinking. And that little incident, I mean, there's nothing even interesting. There's no story. It's just him hanging out with his friends when he was a teenager, started him on a path that he was never able to get off of. And he tried, and he went through some treatments and different things, and he quit for a period of time, but he just kept drinking and drinking and drinking. And when I was in high school, a doctor told him, if you don't stop drinking, you will not see your son graduate. So he quit drinking. And then some other life circumstances happened to him. Some trials happened. He went through a third divorce. So he started drinking again. So he saw me graduate high school, but by the time I was 20, he ended up drinking himself to death. The reason I say that is because you have to play out where it goes. In things that are really small right now, you have to play out where that path leads eventually. And one of the things that kind of happens is sometimes we make little mistakes in high school as adults, and we're embarrassed by it. And so maybe when the trial happened, you kind of failed the test. And you've got some stuff that you have done, experienced, that you're really glad that mommy and daddy don't know about it. And there's this, I guess I'll tell another story. It's kind of a fun one. Actually, at the start of this one is not fun at all. So when my dad was sick, one of my cousins moved in with us to take care of him. And she was with us for about 4 or 5 months. And in the middle of this, she had a boyfriend back home. She had a dog back home. And so she wanted to go and kind of see her dog and her boyfriend. So we kind of did this road trip from the Austin area to Shreveport. If you don't know what Shreveport is, it's a casino town, like gambling. So we show up there to see her dog and her boyfriend. And her boyfriend's like, I want to go gambling. Okay. He goes, see, we were going to stay at like a Motel 6. He's like, no, we're going to the casinos. Like, casinos? Okay. So we pull up into the garage for the casinos, and everywhere, you never notice these things until you're in this moment. Everywhere we look, there's signs that say, no pets, no pets, no pets. Well, we are in Shreveport, so she can see her dog. So as we're unloading this, I'm like, no pets. No, we're not supposed to have pets. He goes, well, okay, I got a plan. He grabs the dog, puts it in a bag, zips it up, and hands it to me. Here, carry this dog in the bag. Like, what? What? Are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, do it. And he just walks in and like, he goes, yeah, just walk straight to the elevator. Like, I think this is unethical. There's so many problems with this. So I walk into the casino, walking through the lobby as quickly as I can. Like, I don't want the dog in the bag very long, but at the same time, I don't want the dog to start barking. So I'm just kind of going through, walking, get to the elevator. Gotta get, there it goes. He can breathe. And somehow we made it. We had a dog, and it never started barking. They were able to sneak it out so it could go to the bathroom, and we got away with a dog in a bag in a casino. Not recommended. Don't try that one. You feel guilty about it the rest of your life. Sometimes I wonder, though, sometimes you guys, me, we have sin in our life. We have things that we have done, and you're just waiting for everyone to hear about it. You're waiting for it to escape. You're waiting for your parents to find out. And so it's like you show up to church on Sunday, you show up at home, you know what you did at the party, what you watched last night. It's like you've got this dog in a bag, and you're kind of walking around waiting to get caught. You don't want to get caught. You don't want it to start barking, but you know it can happen at any time. And that guilt weighs on you. Because there's all kinds of things we do. The first time we sin, it's like intense. First time you cross a line, it's a big deal. The second time, it's a little uncomfortable. By the third time, it just feels normal. And with certain things, It just becomes something you feel like you have to do. It's almost like an addiction, or it is an addiction. And the part of the story where it gets not so fun for me is that we've been talking about trials and our responses and having the right response in trials. For me, for years, I failed the test. When I was 21 or 22, one of my friends' brother was in some sort of accident where he found himself with a rope around his neck in the stage, the theater department at his school. It looked like a suicide attempt. They found him in time, and he was put in a coma. And that night, my friend came over to my house and brought a bottle of alcohol with him. And I watched my dad drink himself to death, so I'd never drank alcohol. But when your friend shows up and his brother's in a coma and maybe attempted suicide, and he goes, "I want to drink with you," it's real easy for that voice in your head to say, "Well, this is a really bad day. If I were to drink tonight, no one's going to hold that against me. Someone is in a coma. Someone might die." So, in that moment, I believed the deception. So I started drinking, knowing that I've got alcoholic genes. But because I'm smart about this, I didn't keep drinking. Then my grandma died 6 months later. Well, my grandma just died, and everyone's drinking at my family event. So I drank too. But I'm smart about this, so I'm not gonna keep drinking. So a year goes by, don't drink again. Something other tragic happens. Well, it's a bad enough day. And there was a lie that I believed. Here's the part where it gets real bad. Eventually, I was a youth pastor. When you're a youth pastor, you know everyone's struggles. I'll tell you right now, there's so much stuff going on in people's lives in this room. And you know all of it, and you are the front lines of the hardest of situations that people face. So eventually, there was enough bad days that I'd created a drinking problem for myself as someone in full-time ministry. You imagine when you're a pastor and you know you have a problem, how that weighs down on you. And so eventually, I actually had to resign from the church I was at to get the help I needed to restore my relationship with my wife and to get healthy again, both physically, spiritually, and to be on a path of restoration. See, when I talk about this stuff, for me, I'm not just talking about stories that are, it's probably good advice. I'm talking about stuff that affected me so personally, wreaked havoc on my wife, broke trust with so many different people. Even right now, as I teach, I have far more insecurity now. Like, am I worthy? Can I do this after I've been such a hypocrite? It weighs on you. And I say all this because the small choices you make now, you guys are right at that point where you can start making choices that set you on paths that can wreak havoc on your life. He continues on. He says, "Don't be deceived, my brothers and sisters." And this is where the good news starts. "Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. He chose to give birth through the word of truth that we might be the first fruits of all he created." See, what he's trying to say here is that every time we're tempted, the deception, the underlying lie in it is that something is better than God. That there's something that can help me handle this moment of stress that's more powerful than what God can offer me. That's the underlying deception. Because our ability to resist temptation is proportional to our trust in God. Do I trust that God actually has something better in mind? Do I trust that God loves me, that he can get me through this, that even in the worst of times, God is still there? So as we talk through all of this, some of you guys probably have even started, in this room, have started to make some big mistakes. And the great news about the gospel, about all of this, is that we've all sinned, fallen short of the glory of God. But God loved us so much that he sent his son to die on the cross for our sins. So my hypocrisy, my issues, that's the whole point of grace. And I can say I don't feel like I've earned it, I'm not worthy. That's the whole point of the gospel, is that even if you've failed the test, God offers grace. So as we close out this weekend, challenge you guys to think through, what is it? What is the thing that tempts you? Start to identify it and start to understand the lies that you start to believe in those moments so that you can not turn to your sin when the trials come, but turn to God. Turn to the one who loved you so much that he would die on the cross for your sins. The ones that you've already committed, the ones in the future, it is already covered by the cross. And when you're in the midst of trials, God still loves you. When you've failed, this was hard for me to, when you're a really well-behaved person, you don't fully understand grace. Because grace is getting what you don't deserve, and when you're a good person, you start to think to yourself, hey, I kind of earned this. When you fail publicly like I have, you understand grace. That even in your biggest failures, time to wake up. Even in your biggest failures, God is there for you, and he's already covered it. That's what makes grace so amazing. Thank you, guys. We're going to close on out, I guess.